Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to what we're calling episode 1A of the Essential Air Service podcast. I have Joey once again joining me, and today we are going to be going over 29 essential air service contracts. Joey, are you ready for this?
Man, I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm going to try my best.
All right. We got a lot of contracts ahead of us. SkyWest made a shocking announcement, as we discussed last time, that they are dropping nearly half of the essential air service contracts that they are operating. In our first episode, we went over what this means for the industry, as well as some other big news across the essential air service part of the airline industry. And we went over some of the predictions and over some of the contracts that are coming up in the next few months. This episode is specifically going to focus on these essential air service contracts just because there are so many of them. So I think we should dive right in, unless there's anything you want to comment about the situation with SkyWest.
The only real thing I have to comment on is there are a lot of cities, and I'm going to ramble on about some of them, and sometimes the words I say and the order I say them in don't make sense. So do bear with me when I try to figure out how to make formal English word sentences.
They're all good. There's so many contracts we're going over, so many ideas that we have, so it's going to be a really exciting time. This is definitely going to be an interesting time because there are so few jet service providers in the essential air service part of the business. There's SkyWest, you got Contour, who just focuses on alternate EAS contracts in Denver Air Connection. So without SkyWest, when you're looking at traditional EAS, you only have Denver Air. So unless you can convince the DOT that all other bids are invalid, you're going to be stuck with a prop plane. So we're going to discuss about that situation a lot and some of the potential solutions or the reality that some of these locations are going to have to face. But we're going to go ahead and dive in, and we'll start off with our first contract and a very interesting situation in Alamosa, Colorado. The interesting part of this is the bidding was already beginning because SkyWest contract was supposed to end in September of this year. With the announcement that they are terminating service, they sent the same order to keep SkyWest in, but it mentioned that the bids are due on April 11th, and it's the same contract for all communities. It's the same order. So I'm not sure if because they released the proposals, and currently Denver Air Connection and Boutique are the only bidders. And I'm not sure if they're going to actually get new proposals on April 12th. So that remains to be seen. But we at least get a good idea of what it's probably going to look like. Denver Air Connection made a really interesting proposal. 12 weekly round trips to Denver, but they would use the Embraer 145, Dornier 328 jet, or the Metroliner. So they're really giving themselves a lot of leeway on what they can use.
Yeah, I don't know how airline, I mean, I understand them, but so for people listening that don't understand, so airlines either provide, 10, 12 or 14 weekly, whatever, on, or twice daily on 30 or 50 seat jets, or they provide, 3 or more daily flights on 9-seat propeller planes. The E145 is 50 seats, the Doe jet or the Dornier jet is 30 seats, and the Metroliner is 9 seats. So that is a super, super big variation of what they could be actually using to fly to Alamosa. And I don't know, and I'm sure the subsidy they are giving is for the E145 or whatever the most expensive plane to operate is. That way it gives them, and putting all of them in there, gives them the freedom to switch between aircraft freely. If they have a slow day, they'll slap a Metroliner on it with 9 seats. If they see there's a lot of bookings, they'll throw the E145 on there. If it's kind of in the middle, they'll probably throw the Doja on there. But that gives them a lot of leeway, and I've never seen anybody bid that much aircraft variation and seat variation for a city before.
I agree. And there's not many airlines, when you think of it, that have that capability. There's no airline I can think of off the top of my head that's had both a 30 to 50 seat jet or propeller aircraft and a 9-seat aircraft. So Denver Air Connection is unique in that respect. One of the things I took a look at is the employments. And even this past year, they still haven't reached the 10,000 employment mark, although they did get very close with SkyWest. So Alamosa is likely going to want a larger capacity. Boutique's proposal was about, I believe, 24 round trips weekly to Denver. So more frequencies, but on that smaller aircraft, the PC-12 8-seat configuration that they typically use. And one of the local articles discussing the two bidders indicated that Denver Air Connection was very favored. They made a few mentions about the poor presentation that Boutique made compared to Denver Air Connection. So there's a very good chance, in my opinion, I think Denver Air will get that contract.
Yeah, Alamosa, I 100% believe Denver Air Connection will bid or will get. Again, the DOT has recently been going with the cheaper carrier, even if the community wants the other carrier. I don't know what the subsidy prices are, but
I think they're the same. They're nearly the same.
Right. So all of our predictions will kind of be subsidy aside, but this one, I do believe Alamosa is going to get it. And I have a feeling that is going to be the case, Denver Air DAC is going to get it. And Alamosa is a city that Boutique recently lost. They lost that city in the summer of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these recently dropped Boutique cities are going to see Boutique and see what's been happening, and they're not going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Simply for the reasoning of they have seen what is happening, and they've seen the signs in Ironwood, Michigan, and Jackson, Tennessee, and they're seeing that, and it's making them a lot more hesitant to actually bid or recommend Boutique for these cities.
And another thing I noticed about the contract, I compared Boutique's contract when they initially served Alamosa to now, their newest proposal. And the biggest difference, because there is a huge increase in subsidy, and the biggest is under maintenance. And the other thing, you just brought it up, Ironwood and Jackson. This isn't like they had a tough time with winter weather. The aircraft couldn't handle it. This is happening in numerous markets. So this is happening all over the place. It's not just something they can, make go away. This is something they're going to have to face and explain in order to re-earn the trust.
And I think the added cost for Alamosa, one of the reasons is Denver Air Connection won McCook, which is not in this city list, and Boutique didn't even bid for Cortez. So that cost for Alamosa is also something to keep up the Denver operations, which at that point will be just Alamosa for the most part.
Exactly.
Because Denver used to be a powerhouse for Boutique. They used to serve, 8-9 cities out of Denver. I don't know the exact list, but they used to serve 8-9 cities, and now it's down to just 2, and come fall, it's probably going to be 0. So that's going to completely remove them from a place in which they have a maintenance base and used to be a major hub for that airline.
Agreed. And this is a good opportunity for Denver Air. You brought up earlier how Ogdensburg and Plattsburgh got that advantage because SkyWest announced it first. In this case, Alamosa was already on the bid, so Denver Air made these proposals before SkyWest made the announcement. So Alamosa gets that advantage.
Absolutely,
the possibility of keeping these jets.
Right, and for those that didn't know, Alamosa, Colorado, that city is up for rebid soon anyways. And like Plattsburgh and Ogdensburg, Alamosa happened a little bit earlier, or those contracts came online a little bit earlier than the rest of them, so they're at that advantage of the first cities are probably going to be the ones that retain the jet service. And then the last cities that reach out or the ones that don't do it quick enough, those cities are going to be the ones that, are going to probably going to be getting propeller airlines. And we'll get into that later as we go down the list of cities.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. Next city we got going up is Cape Girardeau. You know how to pronounce that correctly?
Cape Girardeau, I think. I don't know. There's a couple of followers of mine that are near from that area. If we're pronouncing it incorrectly, please smite us for doing that. But at this point, we're going to call it Cape Girardeau.
I like it. I like that pronunciation. So this community, before SkyWest, they had Cape Air service to St. Louis on their 402s. And the SkyWest did very good in their first year. They got about 13,000 employments, which is big for the community. I read some of the local articles, and that airport manager is very focused on jet service. That's what it sounds like the local businesses want. It's what the airport manager wants. Unfortunately, once again, we only have two air carriers right now that we know of that are really going to be bidding for these. And that's Denver Air Connection, which I believe is going to be focusing, especially with the amount of SkyWest communities around Denver. I think Denver Air is going to just focus around those communities. And then really around the east, which Contour has been building up their presence, I think that's where Contour is going to focus. For Cape Girardeau, I think they could get Contour service, maybe go to St. Louis. I'll give a sneak peek. My other prediction is Fort Leonard could go back to Contour. So maybe they can use the same aircraft across both routes since it's only 2 daily flights. But for standard EAS, I think it's going to be between Boutique, Southern, and Cape. Boutique, of course, on their PC-12, possibly with St. Louis and Chicago service, maybe even include Nashville in there. Southern, not that they require more caravans, I think they could go for St. Louis and maybe Memphis service on their 208. And then, of course, Cape with their new Tecnam, something that they're really trying to integrate, their Tecnam 2012 with service to St. Louis. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so that was a lot of information just threw out there.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But so I do agree, Denver Air Connection would be great, but with the amount of EAS cities that are going active in the Rocky Mountain region, I think for this one, they're going to try and primarily focus on Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas, or, even the surrounding, maybe even go as far as some of the eastern Nebraskan cities. But would I love Denver Air Connection to come further east? Yes, I would love that because then it'd be easier for me to fly them. But do I think they are going to bid? No, because, again, there are 29 cities coming online. They're not going to bid for every one, and they're probably going to bid for the closest ones to them. So first, you mentioned Cape Girardeau. Code is CGI. It's located in southeastern Missouri. I honestly think Cape Air is going to bid, like you said, with St. Louis and Nashville. And with the Southern Airways Air Choice 1 tie-up, I could see one of two things. I could see Southern Airways bidding them to Memphis. But out of those two, I honestly think Cape Air is going to be the victorious one in Cape Girardeau with St. Louis and Nashville, and possibly maybe just St. Louis, because I know Cape Air has another city near there, Marion, Illinois, and I don't know if they are going to serve or they're going to want to serve the same exact thing from two very nearby cities, but I do think it's going to be St. Louis and Nashville for Cape Girardeau. And that second city that you brought up, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, they recently got SkyWest, and they used to have Contour. That city, I think, could possibly go back to Contour, but that is going to have to take a lot of extra time because that's alternate EAS, and that does take considerably more time because they have to bid, and then they have to reject the current ones, and then they have to seek alternate plans, which is where the alternate essential air service comes in. But because they have that tie with them, I think that could happen. But if we're just talking about plain and ordinary essential air service, I think, honestly, we could see possibly just Memphis on Southern Air. If we're talking just ordinary Essential Air Service, I'm thinking we're going to see Southern Airways Express to either to Memphis and possibly St. Louis.
You think Southern will get it?
Yeah, if we're talking about just normal EAS, then I think Southern will come out victorious with Fort Leonard Wood going to Memphis. But if they do go the alternate air service route, I think they've had such a good partnership with Contour, I think they could end up going back to Contour.
Okay. I have to say Cape Air for Cape Girardeau. They have experience with them as a prior carrier. They have the strong code shares with the American Airlines and numerous interline agreements with others. Technums has been experiencing some issues, some maintenance issues, which we'll talk about a little later with another contract. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring that up. But I think they would stand the best chance, especially with the reliability issues with Boutique and Southern only going to some smaller markets. I think Cape Air will be the best option for them.
Right, especially being in the southeast. I'm sure they're going to talk to Jackson about Boutique when they bid.
Oh, man. So bringing up to the next one we're going to go over, it's going to be Clarksburg, West Virginia. This is another one where Allegiant has a big presence. They currently serve 4 destinations, including Orlando, St. Petersburg, Destin, and Myrtle Beach, with numerous frequencies per week. SkyWest currently offers service to Dulles. When I looked at the previous carrier, about 4 or 5, maybe a little more, 5 years ago, it was Via Air. And if you ever want to, if you ever have some time for you, take a look at the community comments on Via Air, because they're long and they are very upset with Via Air and the service that they provided. But they provided service sometimes to Baltimore and Charlotte until the airport requested to terminate their alternate essential air service contract due to extremely poor operational reliability. Once again, once again, it's another community. Allegiant actually has twice the amount of passengers that SkyWest brings in on their service. For Clarksburg, this is going to be another one where the only possible jet service I think would even be possible would be Contour, possibly to Philadelphia, but once again, I believe the fleet for Contour is about 10 135s and maybe 4 145s. They do have a strong charter presence under their parent company, Corporate Flight Management. So I'm not sure how many, if they're planning on getting more jets, how many they're willing to use on their current essential air service routes or alternate. Everything Contour does is alternate EAS. And they currently have, I believe, let me count them up, I believe 7 contracts. They actually have 8, spanning West Coast to East Coast. So if they do Plattsburgh and Ogdensburg, that's going to bring it up to 10. And they only have 14 jets spanning across the nation. So it's going to be questionable how much Contour is going to be willing to expand further. But for traditional EAS, I think it's going to be between Boutique and Southern. Boutique doing a typical Pittsburgh, Baltimore on the PC-12, and for Southern, Pittsburgh and Dulles. So you're going to have the 2 very big points. The PC-12 is definitely advantageous for Boutique. It's a nicer aircraft overall. Unfortunately, you're not going to a large hub with a large airline operating, which is why Southern transitioned their Baltimore service to Dulles last year. And
that's really smart. I don't know why Boutique doesn't. I mean, I'm sure there's operational regions, and I'm sure Dulles is a lot more expensive. But with that United partnership, it just doesn't make sense to go to Baltimore. Yes, I know Southwest is there, and they're a low-cost carrier. But
one of my thoughts was Boutique could potentially, because Baltimore is a good low-cost airport. You get big presence from Southwest and big presence from Spirit. Pittsburgh doesn't add a lot. There's a lot of people that go there for leisure, especially business. But I think what the better one would be to change Pittsburgh. Change Pittsburgh to something like Newark. And that's a big United hub. That's a difficult one because it is a slot restricted airport, but boutique, or I believe someone made a proposal, I think it was boutique, for Newark service. It was for a different EAS community. They didn't, obviously they didn't get the contract, but they did propose it. So that got me thinking they could do a split, and they could even change Altoona too to be a split between Newark and Baltimore, and I think that would be the best of both worlds. But right. That is a good point. Southern at Dulles with their new interline arrangement, that's huge, and that
was very, very smart on their part.
Mhm. And right. I imagine Boutique is just going to propose Pittsburgh to Baltimore anyway. Right. So I think that could be the edge that Southern gets. I think they could get that Clarksburg contract under traditional essential air service. And the community, just looking at the employments, they're not getting enough where a jet aircraft wouldn't necessarily be needed. They've been around the 10,000 employment mark, so you're going to want more frequencies, but I think they could do without it for at least a little while.
All right. So Clarksburg, like you said, Contour is going to be very, very, very low on aircraft, unless they get more, which is always a possibility, because I know American has a lot of E135s that they are sitting in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about Contour, if you take a look at a picture I just texted you, if you look at the geography of West Virginia on a map, and I'm actually going to link this with Lewisburg, West Virginia in the south.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, Contour flies from Charlotte to Beckley to Parkersburg, West Virginia. That's not part of the thing that's dropping. But so what Contour does is they fly from Charlotte to Beckley, and then they continue on to Parkersburg, and then they reverse and they fly to Beckley and then back to Charlotte. If Contour does decide to bid this, Clarksburg is just east of Parkersburg, and Lewisburg is just east of Beckley. I think we could have another tag flight here if Contour does decide to bid this.
That's a really good idea.
Charlotte to Lewisburg and then Clarksburg. And I honestly think if it does go the way of essential or alternate essential air service, I think it could go the way of a tag flight with Lewisburg and Clarksburg, just because of how close those cities are and the very similar relation they have to Parkersburg and Beckley in the western/middle part of that state. But if we're talking about regular essential air service, I think Clarksburg will go the way of Southern Airways Express, because Morgantown is also near there, but they also serve Bedford and Dubois, Pennsylvania, and those are close too. So I honestly think Clarksburg is going to get Pittsburgh and Dulles with Southern. And if you don't mind, Lewisburg is a little bit farther south than Clarksburg, and I think Pittsburgh to Lewisburg would be, it wouldn't be too far, but it'd be a little bit uncomfortable in a Cessna 208 in the middle of the winter, especially with the mountainous terrain of West Virginia. So I think Lewisburg will go to Boutique, and I see Baltimore, and actually I'm going to say Charlotte.
Yeah. You know
that
what?
American hub there.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, I did not even notice that they were. I knew they were all in West Virginia, but I didn't know they were that close, especially with Contour. So I have to agree. In fact, I would go as far as saying I think that's what's going to happen. I think Contour could do the same thing for that Lewisburg and Clarksburg with a Charlotte connection for the American Airlines interline agreement. When I was reading those Via Air community comments, it seems like they were really, all of them had Via Air, and they were in heavy communication, which each community was in communication with each other about what was going on, and you can see they make a lot of the same decisions. So I think they could definitely partner up again, especially with Contour now having a proven track record. I think they could go down the line with Contour You also bring a great point bringing up these communities. A lot of the communities, when I was making this list, you can see they had kind of the same experiences. So a lot of these were via air. All the 2 or 3 contracts that we're going to bring up next are going to be former via air routes. When we talk about Denver, a lot of these are former Penn Air, which I didn't even know Penn Air serviced Denver.
Yeah,
they were former Penn Air routes in some former Great Lakes. So the way I structured this I kind of grouped them together to kind of these former operators, because it could indicate very well to how they're going to go next, who they're going to choose next, I should say.
Oh yeah.
So we can roll right into
the
Lewisburg. Yeah.
Funny.
All right, those via air comments. My goodness. Next one's going to be Decatur. You brought this up when we were discussing Girardeau, another former Cape Air market that did Chicago to St. Louis service. SkyWest took over, and they did well, but nothing to write home about. And I think it's going to go back to Cape Air on the Tecnam 2012 Chicago St. Louis service. It's the same that they're doing for several communities, including Quincy and now Burlington. They're doing the same service pattern. I think boutique, and I even think possibly Southern, since it's a former Air Choice 1 market, could make the proposal. But I think Cape will ultimately get it.
Right. Yeah, this is a super easy one. Boutique, Southern, and Cape, they're all going to bid for it. But like you said, it's very easy. This is a former Cape Air city. And the only reason they didn't go with Cape Air before, I'm pretty sure, was because they wanted jet service. Like most of these EAS service cities have, they have a severe case of shiny jet syndrome. And that's why 99% of the cities stuck with or recommended the jet service. And I do think that Decatur is 100% going to get Cape Air back with Chicago, O'Hare, and St. Louis. That's a super easy decision on their part.
Yeah, I like that. That's one of the few ones in this list where I looked and I was like, oh yeah, I know that one's going to go back to Cape. That one's a piece of cake. So watch it go to someone else and just completely ruin my list. But
right, yeah, kind of screw up the list completely.
I'll be like, oh man, that's the only one that I thought was going. So the next one, since that was a pretty easy one, is a really interesting contract, and that is Devil's Lake, North Dakota. 10 points for a great name for a city. But the interesting part of this is a really, really far away location. It's currently just over a 2-hour flight to Devil's Lake from Denver. Under historical, it's gone to Minneapolis, St. Paul, under Great Lakes. So in my opinion, I think that it's possible that Devil's Lake could go to Denver Air if they wanted to use a jet, maybe one of their Dorniers, because it's looking at the passenger numbers. They're not getting a lot of passengers. They're not even getting 10,000 enplanements. So I find it highly doubtful that you're going to want to use a 50-seat jet on this route.
Right.
The only one I could think counter would be Boutique to Minneapolis on their PC-12.
Right.
What are your thoughts on Devil's Lake?
Southern Air and Cape Air, I don't even think they're going to make a bid for this. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually going to link this with Jamestown, North Dakota as well. So right now with the pilot shortage and all that, blah, 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 United is tagging cities in, tag flights. Main hub, one EAS city goes to another EAS city, and then back to the hub. Jamestown, North Dakota, and Devil's Lake, North Dakota, like you said, awesome name. These were the only 2 cities that are still linked in the United Airlines network. These are the only 2 essential air service cities. And again, like you said, because of the very low enplanement, these are the only cities before the shortages and all that, before the pandemic. These were the only 2 cities that remained as tag flights. Most of the cities were tag flights at some point, but these were the only 2 that remained tag flights during the high periods of travel in 2019 and 2018. Cape Air, too far away. Minneapolis is there, but I don't think anybody's going to want an unpressurized plane going to Minneapolis in the middle of the winter, especially because North Dakota is, and
it's a little cold.
yeah, I'm not going to say the language, but holy crap, it's cold. And it's in the middle of bumcrap nowhere, so I don't think they're going to get that. Southern Airways, I could see them bidding for it with a PC-12 possibly, or even the King Air 200, but that's a different conversation with the King Air. But
Yeah.
these are really interesting cities, and they're super far. With the exception of Minneapolis, there are no other major airline hubs anywhere near there. I could see Boutique Air bidding the PC-12 to Minneapolis to Devil's Lake and then Minneapolis to Jamestown. But I think as long as they have the aircraft available, I think this is going to go Denver Air Connection, and I think it's going to stay as a tag flight. I think it's going to be either an E-145 or a Doughjet. Honestly, the contract is probably going to offer both. It's going to go Denver, Devil's Lake, Jamestown, and then back to Denver. Honestly, I think that's how it's going to go. And yeah.
Yeah, that very interesting prediction. I like the inclusion of more tag flights, and you actually bring up a great point, because when I looked at some of the historical essential air service, especially along California, SkyWest actually did that a lot. They did a lot of tag flights to the major hubs, specifically San Francisco. So do you think this could be kind of a giving life again to that concept of these tag flights for essential air service routes?
It's tough, and I actually asked the director of the Ogdensburg Port and Air Authority about that with Contour, and if they were willing to tag with Plattsburgh. A lot of these cities have had, like you said, have had tag flights in the past, and they do not want to go back to tag flights. But if it's gonna be a tough decision for the communities whether they want nonstop on a prop or it's probably going to be the decision between nonstop service on a prop or tag service on a jet. And like you said, SkyWest did that a lot. Cape Girardeau was tagged with Paducah. I'm sorry if I butcher this name. Paducah, Kentucky, in Chicago. Those were tag flights. But Devil's Lake and Jamestown, those were some of the lowest number SkyWest flights that were on that list in terms of enplanements even before the pandemic. So I think these two cities are going to be continuously linked together. Unless there's a major oil boom or something happens up in that area, I think these two cities are going to be tagged together for the foreseeable future.
Definitely. All right, so moving on to the next one, we're moving closer to Denver, and we're going to start off with Dodge City, Kansas. This is a former boutique route, and that's operated on the PC-12. They had 3 daily flights to Denver, and then it was transitioned over to SkyWest with a 50-seat jet. And it's another example of a community that's nowhere near 10,000 enplanements. Yes, they had more with SkyWest, but I think this is going to be another boutique with the PC-12, Southern. They bid the King Air 200s on a few routes. I was actually quite surprised that they didn't make a bid for Alamosa. But if they were to bid the Dodge City route, I think they would do the King Air 200. And I think Denver Air would either offer the Dornier or the Metroliner. It's tough to see which one they'll do, but I think it would be between one of those two. And I think with their experience, I think Boutique would take the contract.
This area is very diverse, and it's going to be very hard to pinpoint and guess what cities or what airline is going to 100% get that contract, just because there are so many. There's so much rich essential air service history in this area. We were talking about Dodge, correct?
Correct. Before Boutique took it, I believe that was a Great Lakes route.
Right. Dodge and a couple of these other cities in the state, they were all former boutique routes before they took over the jets a long time ago. And that was before Boutique had their major snap. So they may talk to some current boutique cities and talk about their experience, or they could look at their past history with Boutique. It's going to be tough because at some point we're going to run into the issue of these larger jet carriers not having enough planes or pilots to do all of these cities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the major issue with a lot of these. Do I think Denver could get most of these if they have the resources? 100%. But again, we're going to run into the problem at some point where they just do not have enough planes or pilots to do this. But it's tough. Man, this is really tough. I didn't think I'd be using my brain this much today.
Yeah. Well, while you're thinking about it, Denver Air, it really depends on what they propose. They do have a great track record with the communities they serve, but I'm not sure if Dodge City would want the Metroliner or if Denver Air will even propose to use it. The issue with Southern is the King Air 200. They proposed that for Chadron, as we mentioned before, but they have mostly been using the Cessna 208. There have been issues with the FAA certification process and getting these King Air 200s.
It's tough because we're going to run into the point where there's not enough pilots and aircraft. But Southern is going to want to build – they only have one hub out of Denver, and it's to Chadron, Nebraska. But I think that Southern is going to continue to bid for routes out of Colorado, and they're going to try and build up a hub similar to what Boutique had. And I think and even now we're seeing Denver Air Connections route map. It looks very familiar. They have all the former Boutique cities. They got Alliance. They have Thief River. They have Ironwood. They have McCook, Clovis. Their route map is looking very familiar. But I think Southern is going to get Dodge City. And so do you have the enplanements numbers?
Yes.
Okay,
so
was
Boutique,
Liberal or Dodge smaller?
Let's take a look. Liberal.
Liberal, okay.
Yeah.
I think Liberal is going to go the way... Huh?
Not by much, though. Not by much. It's very close.
All right. Dodge and Liberal, I think one of them is going to go to Southern Airways Express, and one of them is going to go to Denver Air Connection on the Metroliner. I don't know which one, but which one's going to be which, but I do think it's going to be Southern at one of them and Denver at the other.
And this is another interesting point. Denver Air and their parent company, Key Lime Air, they only have 2 Metroliners that I know of that are in the passenger configuration. Yeah, and they have one on Alliance, and now they're going to have one on McCook.
Right, and actually, here's the thing. So get this. It wasn't an executive, but I was talking with someone I know that works at the airline, or that I was talking to somebody just, talking through the airport, and I'm not going to mention their name because I don't want anything to happen to them. But they said because of that exact reason, they only have one Metroliner or 2 Metroliners in those 2 routes. At some point, I think they're going to, he/she said, they're probably going to link those 2 cities together. So they're going to go Denver, McCook, Alliance, and then Denver.
I have heard that rumor. And it sounds like some of the arguments that I've heard is that Denver Air could convert some of the Key Lime Air cargo planes, which is true. They could convert them to passenger configurations, which is a bit of a process, but they do have a strong cargo operation. Right now in the pandemic, cargo operations have never been stronger. So
and that brings up the next
do you
point.
want to convert them, or do you want to keep them?
Right. Do they want to sacrifice these cargo planes? Because Metroliners aren't the newest things in the world. There are they're not producing them. And the companies that do have them in the world are using them to the fullest, either as I'd say 90% cargo. And then there's a couple of passenger operators up in Canada that have the Metroliner. One that comes to mind is Bearskin. But just like Denver Air Connection, they have them for their own unique operation, and it's the only aircraft, and it works for that operation, and they don't want to give them up. So that brings up the point, with those very limited number of Metroliners, they're going to either have to convert some of them from cargo to passenger, or they're going to have to bid on a jet. And I think, like I said, passenger or pilots and aircraft, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of tag flights in this bid.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, if you don't mind, I'm going to segue into Hays and Salina, Kansas. I think those cities are going to be a tag with Denver Air Connection.
Ooh, interesting prediction. And you're right about the Metroliner. I think we're just past the 20th anniversary since they stopped production. And the other interesting point is Central Air Service. You're not making a big profit on these routes at all. And sometimes you're losing money, as we're going to talk about later. Cargo operation, on the other hand, has never been better. You're making record profits. So why would you want to take your gold farm and sacrifice it to something that at best can make you a little bit, not even as much money as you're making right now?
Mm-hmm. So Hays and Salina, so like I said, Dodge and Liberal, Kansas, one of them's going to go to Denver Air Connection and one of them's going to go Southern. That's my prediction for those two. Hays and Salina, I think it's going to be a tag flight with the Dornier jet because, like you said, we're nearing that 20th anniversary of when they ended production on that plane, and there aren't that many sitting out there, and the ones that are sitting in the graveyard aren't in the best condition because they've been sitting there for so long. So,
I have to agree with you. I think Dodge City in Hays or Dodge City in Liberal could be a tag flight, possibly on Southern's Metro. I think Salina, they work really hard to get jet service. They're really far away from any other airport. I think they're going to get a Denver Air Dornier. That's what makes the most sense to me. I think there will be tag flights, but I think Salina will actually be alone. Let me take a look at the employment. I think they're actually, out of all the Kansas ones, I think they're the strongest.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Hays and Salina and actually Dodge and Liberal, Hays and Salina, they connect to Chicago and Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hays is actually did really good with that split, but they've struggled since COVID. Salina has well over 10,000 passengers. In fact, they had 15,000 in 2019, a record year. And this past year, they just had over 14,000 passengers. So I can definitely see them continuing jet service and maybe too.
I'd like to make a edit to my prediction. I'd like to edit that to the still Denver Air Connection, but the E-145s. Because those seem to be planes that Denver Air Connection is still consistently being able to acquire. And I think that, honestly, if they, I don't know, it's tough. Because, again, the planes and the pilots, it's going to be tough for a lot of these cities.
I think they could do what they were proposing to do with Pierre and Watertown, which is go, Denver, Pierre, Watertown, Chicago, and back.
Yeah. I think, honestly, that's what's going to happen with these guys. I mean, I know Pierre and Watertown were both like, oh, we need our own jet service. And again, they were way before all this happened, so they got lucky. But a lot of these cities are not going to get so lucky. And they're either going to have tag flights or propeller flights nonstop. And these cities, I think, are going to end up going the way of the jet in the tag. It's going to be Denver, Hays, Salina, and then Chicago.
There we go, 4 for 1.
Huh?
I was like, there we go, 4 for 1, 4 predictions. That's interesting, yeah. Oh, for those Kansas routes.
Okay. I was like, man, we're only done 4 of them?
Well, we just busted those 4 ones. No, yeah, we're making pretty good progress. I did write down Air Charter Express will make another proposal on their King 95, and I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, yeah, I think Air Charter Express is a really weird one. They bid for Ogdensburg with service to Syracuse. I love Syracuse. That's where I'm from. Syracuse is not a hub. I'm sorry. It used to be a hub in the 90s and early 2000s with Piedmont and U.S. Airways Express, but they are no longer a hub. Air Charter Express was trying to bid Piper Seminoles, I think, was it, right?
Chieftains, yeah.
Piper Chieftains to Syracuse. That's
no.
I'm sorry, I love Syracuse, but that's asinine. What is that? They have
That's
no
not gonna
coasters
happen.
or airlines to speak of. I've never even heard of them, and that's saying something. I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, they're
I know
actually
most of the carriers. Honestly, I don't know where, but I think Ultimate Air Shuttle may also throw in a random bid here or there.
Oh,
There's going to be a couple of random ones that we don't see, and it's going to happen.
I agree. Moving to the next one, is Eau Claire in Wisconsin, and this is a really interesting one because out of all the communities, they're one of three that are just the highest performing. They have at least 20,000 passengers in plane every year. Very surprised to see SkyWest drop this one. There had to be some conversation with United on this about the future of this route. Mm-hmm. And even this past year, really strong bookings, really strong employment. So I can't imagine, unless they were losing a lot of money, I just can't imagine why they would drop this route.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the pilots and the planes or whatever stuff is going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about except the higher up people at SkyWest. And again, it's surprising those implements are so high considering they're relatively close to Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
But,
so my predictions on these will be boutique for Chicago and Minneapolis service on the PC-12, Southern Chicago-Minneapolis split on the Caravan, or possibly the PC-12. And the one that I think it would go to, I think United would make a proposal using the CRJ-550 under their regional GoJet, which they have a very strong presence at Chicago. And I think that's how they would move forward because it is the 50-seat jet in the two-class configuration. They actually, as we mentioned Presque Isle before, Presque Isle this summer is going to start service on GoJet CRJ-550 to their newer Cub.
Interesting. Yeah, what was I going to say? I don't remember. Crap. Okay, keep talking. I forgot what I was going to say.
No worries. So it's once again, it's an interesting situation for Eau Claire. They mentioned in local articles that they are going to be trying to get jet service back. In 2019, one of their strongest years, they had 43,000 passengers, over 20,000 emplaned. This past year, 30,000, 15,000 emplaned, which is a huge drop with COVID. They didn't see that strong of a recovery yet. But I'm very confident that they're going to get back to those 40,000 employments. So we'll see if United makes a bid. I think I have to imagine they're going to get jet service back. I would be very surprised if they went down to propeller service. They're going to put up a pretty big fight before that happens.
All right. I don't think United is going to bid. But one thing, I am going to throw this in the pot. I don't know how likely it is. But again, all of these SkyWest cities that are ending are United branded. Mm-hmm. If you look at the map of the Midwest and all of the EAS cities, there considerable number of these EAS cities are Delta branded SkyWest destinations. And honestly, if the Delta side is still good, because apparently that's what we're seeing with these, 31 SkyWest cities dropping under the United brand, if they are a separate, obviously it's all still under SkyWest, but if the Delta side is a separate pool of pilots, I could possibly see Delta with SkyWest, or maybe even Endeavor possibly bidding Detroit, Eau Claire, and Minneapolis.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Because, like I said, majority of the cities, the EAS cities in the Midwest, are Delta branded SkyWest. And if the implements are as high as you're looking at, then I could see possibly Delta making a crack at it. And if Delta bids for that, they will 100% win that.
Yeah, whoever brings jet service is definitely going to win that. I was hesitant to say Denver Air Connection. Once again, there's just so many routes, and I think they're going to focus more on their Denver hub, but they are a possible bidder. I could see them bidding for it. I was hesitant about Delta. Delta's been very uninvolved in essential air service for the last, since pretty much 10 years ago is when they really kind of pulled out. They've let SkyWest use the Delta branding for some of these routes, and I've imagined there's a few markets they're interested in, but there hasn't been any indication that they're looking to expand their essential air service presence. Not to say it's not possible, but that's why I didn't bring them up into it yet. But I do see, I was thinking for the other one I'll bring up later, there's another one in Michigan that I think could very well go to either one of Delta's regionals or SkyWest under the Delta brand. I think that one's Hancock, Michigan.
Yeah. So we'll do that one once we finish Eau Claire, I guess. But so Eau Claire, yeah, it's going to be hard. And honestly, when they post those proposals, we can do another episode on the 13th or 14th of April when they do post the proposals, and then we can make our final, assumptions.
We'll have a field day with that.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited for April 12th. But for this point, so Delta, if Delta bids, they will 100% win that. Eau Claire to Chicago is a little bit far for a Cessna 208. Air Choice 1 did do Ironwood to Chicago, which is a similar distance. I see. I don't think I would love Boutique to get it, but they probably won't because of the proximity to Ironwood and the likelihood that they're going to talk. The communities are going to talk to each other. So Boutique is probably not going to get that just because those communities are going to communicate and they're going to see what happened in Ironwood. I think Southern Airways with the Cessna 208 to Minneapolis and Chicago. If Delta doesn't bid.
Interesting. Yeah, that's such a tough one to predict, really. It was so unexpected that they dropped in the first place that it's kind of unsure of, especially with the lack of jet service providers, known jet service providers for EAS. It's going to be interesting to see.
I honestly didn't realize, before I really got into, and I made the EAS map, I'm honestly still surprised that Eau Claire is an essential air service city. It's a good size city. And
if you made some changes to fare, I have to think that you would be able to do that. Because we're going to talk later about two cities that actually had no subsidy, and now they have subsidy because of the impacts of the pandemic.
And I know exactly which ones you're talking about. But, sure. Okay, so Eau Claire, for me, it was Southern Airways, MSP, O'Hare. Unless Delta bids, then it's 100% going to Delta. All right, next.
All right, so moving on, we got Fort Dodge and Mason City, two cities very close to each other in Iowa. These are both former Air Choice 1 routes. Fort Dodge, let me check. Do you remember off the top of your head which cities each went to? Because I know they had Chicago, Minneapolis, and St. Louis in some configuration.
It was one plane went Chicago, Mason City, Fort Dodge, St. Louis. And then there was also a plane that went from Minneapolis to Fort Dodge and then Minneapolis to Mason City. And the reason they did that is so that both cities would be connected to 3 hubs.
Which is smart.
It is. And for these, honestly, I think it's really simple. I think these two cities are just going to go back to, Air Choice 1 is no longer, it's kind of Southern Airways, so I think they're going to bid Southern Airways Express is going to do exactly the same thing that Air Choice 1 used to do.
Yeah, so of course I think Boutique is just going to bid everything and see what catches.
Right,
I presume they'll send in a bid for Chicago and Minneapolis. They may include an option for St. Louis for one or both. And they'll do very similar bids for both of them. I think Southern will do the same thing Air Choice One, as you mentioned before. They have experience in the market, and Shane Storrs is coming in as a VP for Southern, so he's going to bring in that experience with him. I actually think that Denver Air will also make a proposal to serve either some combination of Chicago or Minneapolis on their Dorney Air. They have, of course, the Dorney Air, primarily the Dorney Air, running the Thief River and Ironwood, Minneapolis to Ironwood route, and I think they could expand it to, I think they would try to go for, or at least submit a proposal for Fort Dodge and Mason City, in my opinion.
All right. While we're in Iowa, if you don't mind, we can move on to Sioux City.
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, that was actually one that was at no subsidy before the pandemic, and then American Airlines not only requested subsidy, I think they requested subsidy at first, and then they completely dropped off the market.
SkyWest United?
American, actually. This was an American market, and they show there's a graph that I included in what I sent to you, and I'll put it on the screen too. And it's actually the revenue, for that route specifically in Sioux City, and it was hammering American Airlines. They were seeing and projecting even further losses for Sioux City. I was surprised they didn't just ask for a rebid, do what Boutique did, and say, hey, we're experiencing unprecedented financial changes due to the pandemic. We're going to need a subsidy now. This just came out of nowhere, and I'm fairly confident the DOT would have approved pretty much anything they asked for. I was really surprised to see them just completely cut it and go, nope, we're just going to drop out. They, at the time, I'm not sure if they did it at the start of the pandemic, but they served both Chicago and Dallas-Fort Worth. I think they even upgraded service occasionally to the E-175 series, which is becoming a really popular aircraft right now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Sioux City, it's a good distance from any of the hubs. Mm-hmm. Sioux City is 466 miles from Denver. It's 436 miles from Chicago, and the only hub that's even relatively close is Minneapolis, and even that is still 233 miles. I think we could see this going to Boutique, honestly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a longer. This is the first one I'm thinking Boutique might get. It's a longer route. The PC-12 would be nice in the winter, especially because I know middle of the country gets pretty cold. I mean, I love the cold, but relative to other parts of the country, Sioux City tends to get pretty cold, and I think they're going to bid Minneapolis. Chicago to Sioux City is a really far route. It is 436 miles. It is about 10 miles longer than Boutique's current route, which is Dallas to Carlsbad, New Mexico. Dallas to Carlsbad, New Mexico's Boutique's current longest route is 423 miles. Chicago to Sioux City is 436. So I could see the carrier bidding Chicago and Minneapolis for Sioux City, but if that happens, the subsidy is going to be a lot higher, which I know the DOT does not want right now. So I have a feeling they are going to get Sioux City is probably going to end up, no matter what carrier, they're probably going to end up with Minneapolis just because that's the close one. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's going to be on Boutique. And I know in the past with Boutique's proposals, they've had a couple of weird routes in there. Like I said in the past, they've had Chadron to Rapid City. They've had a couple of these other interesting ones, but I also think they might throw in a bid for Sioux City to Omaha just because.
Yeah, I actually put that in. And the first thing when he said that came to mind was Merced. They proposed a Merced to Reno, Merced to Monterey, just really out there cities that didn't quite fully make sense.
Right, and when McCook was being rebid, which ended up going to Denver Air Connection in the end, they were giving the option of Denver to McCook and then Denver to McCook and then McCook to Omaha. And I think, I don't know the geography or how the highways are set up, but I just see them throwing in Omaha just to show that they have two destinations they can serve. I see them throwing Omaha in there just because.
Yeah, one that the community wants. They try to appeasing.
Right, but I do think Boutique is going to come out with this city.
Very interesting. So the ones that I listed, I considered American coming back with Chicago service on the 145. The other one could be Denver Air Connection on the 145 to Denver. I also put in possibly Southern on either but very likely the King Air 200 or the PC-12 to Denver. I'm not sure the distances I didn't calculate those, so you would know that more. But Boutique, I think they're really going to push for a jet service either between Denver Air Connection or if they get something from American. That's what I think they're going to go for. But Boutique, that's an interesting prediction.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those cities where it's going to be tough because it's in the middle of the country. It's a good distance from most of the hubs. It is directly south of Watertown, so it is in that distance-wise, it's around the same as Watertown, South Dakota. But like I said, at some point, these airlines are going to run out of planes or pilots, and I think at some point, a couple of these are going to be have to given. Oh my God, I can't talk. A couple of these are going to have to go to Boutique.
Yeah. So moving on to the next one, I'm taking a look at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. We talked about this a little before when we were talking about Cape Girardeau. This is a former contour route to St. Louis. Before that, it was Cape Air, who served the airport for, I believe, about 10 years. One of the interesting things. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we already talked about Fort Leonard Wood and Cape Girardeau.
Oh, you did? Okay, I don't remember.
We did. The other cities in there we haven't talked about are Paducah and Joplin.
Mm-hmm. Did we mention Lewisburg? Did we talk about Staunton?
What?
Staunton, Virginia.
Oh, Shenandoah. No, we didn't talk about that.
Okay. So we'll move to that one next. That was another former Via Air that was operating service to Charlotte and Orlando. Of course, Via Air had their issues and they rebidded and they got SkyWest after that. I think this is, let me check the employments on this one. Looks like they had 16,000 employments in 2019. This past year they had just above 10,000. So
not that many.
They're not going to be happy with a prop plane, but I was really iffy saying if Contour would serve here. I just didn't feel confident that they would. What about you?
I don't think they will. Shenandoah is only 90 miles from Washington Dulles.
Really?
And yeah, it's really close to Dulles, honestly. Not as close as some of the other ones, but yeah, it's 90 miles as the bird flies from Washington Dulles. And it's.
Do you think this will be like a?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And I was going to say it's 136 miles from Baltimore.
Okay.
With this one, it's tough for me. I'm going to say it's going to be one of two things. It's going to be. Well, first off, Shenandoah, it's a little bit too far a distance from Pittsburgh, I would say. It's still doable.
Mm-hmm.
You can still do Pittsburgh on a Cessna 208. It's 170 miles. But will they do it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. So these northeast mid-Atlantic cities are going to be tough. It's going to be a choice really between Boutique and Southern Airways Express is what this is going to come down to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and when you mentioned that distance from Dulles, I was thinking maybe 30 round trips, Dulles to Staunton. Like, on Southern, especially with their airlines, just frequencies and capacity is the two things you really need there. And I think that's a winning combination. The only thing I think that's going to differentiate boutique would be a split between like a Baltimore and Atlanta. I think they could do, or something in Charlotte would be another good one, or maybe a Dulles in Charlotte. They could potentially do, and I imagine Southern's going to give 5 or so options to do something like Dulles, Charlotte, Pittsburgh, combine those across the 208.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's tough because Shenandoah, it's getting towards the Appalachian Mountain region. It's very mountainous, so I don't know how well an unpressurized Cessna 208 would do from Shenandoah to Pittsburgh. It may have to take a little detour for that. Honestly, I could see this one possibly also going to boutique with Baltimore and Charlotte. Actually, Charlotte's only about 239 miles away from Shenandoah.
That's a big American hub.
Yep, it's a big American hub. I mean, of course, they could just bid Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and that would be the easy way out. And honestly, I could totally see the carrier taking the easy way out and doing Baltimore and Pittsburgh. But if they want to win the bid, they are going to need one of the two hubs on either end to be a major airline hub. Yes, Baltimore is a major airline hub, but the connectivity is not there.
Yeah.
They have Southwest, but it's the inner lines. If they go Southern, they have United to Dulles.
Yeah, Baltimore is great if you can flank it with some destination that you have a coach at. So if you do like a Charlotte, Baltimore, that's perfect because you get the people that want Southwest, the low fares of Baltimore, and you're still within proximity to the Washington area, but you still have that interline with a major carrier. So it's like the best of both worlds.
But for this one, I'm gonna go with boutique to Charlotte, and then Baltimore, but I wish they would move to Dulles because that makes more sense. But if they don't move to Dulles, I'm still sticking with Baltimore and Charlotte.
I don't know if you've seen, but historically, boutique has served Dulles before. I think to Messina to Dulles.
I know they used to do Dulles, and Southern Airways also used to do Dulles, and then at some point, both of them switched to Baltimore, and then recently Southern switched back because of their United partnership. But the difference was when boutique got their United partnership, they never switched back to Dulles.
Yeah. Very interesting decision making for sure.
I'm going to say Baltimore and Charlotte, and that would also give, if that did happen, that would give North Carolina the first EAS. Nope, sorry, I'm lying. Ignore that. There are multiple EAS routes served out of Charlotte.
Yeah, thanks to Contour. I think they do Muscle Shoals and the Beckley-Parkersburg combo.
Right, yeah.
All right. So moving on, back to Michigan. Did we talk about Hancock, Michigan?
We did not talk about Houghton. Nope.
All right. That's the northern one, right? Northern Michigan? Yeah.
This one is going to be really, really interesting. It's pretty far from any of the hubs. Even the closest hub, Minneapolis is the closest hub to Houghton Airport, which is Hancock County or whatever you want to call it. Minneapolis is the closest hub, but even that is 277 miles. And then Chicago is 360 miles. That's a long way to go on a Cessna 208. So I'm thinking none of the bids in this city are going to be on the Cessna 208. Are they going to give an option? Yes, they're probably going to give an option. But the weather in that community is very cold in the winter. They have a big university up there. And actually, how are the enplanements for this community?
High, very high. In 2019, it was 47,000 passengers, which is about 23,000 enplanement.
Right.
This past year, 35,000 passengers, which is about 17,000 enplanements.
I'm sorry, this past year they had 35,000?
passengers, 17,000, which are enplanements.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty high, especially during the pandemic as we're recovering. This city is going to need. I don't say cities need jet. No city needs a jet, but there's a
they need capacity.
They need the capacity, and the fact that they are a good distance from any of the hubs, they're going to need a bigger plane. There is a huge university and college up there, and the closest airport to them is Ironwood, which is another EAS city.
Interesting.
I would love to see Delta. I would love it, because the Delta doesn't serve any cities in that area. The closest Delta destination to there is Iron Mountain, which is on the southern end of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. There's no highways in the Upper Peninsula, no typical highways like people in the U.S. are used to driving between Detroit and Chicago. It's like a 2-lane road with a yellow dotted line down the middle. That is the Upper Peninsula version of a highway. So this city, yeah, it's going to have to be, I don't know, because Denver Air Connection is super close to there already.
This is the other one, like Eau Claire, that you brought an interesting point when we first started this conversation on SkyWest. That SkyWest maintained Delta is willing to use a CRJ200 through at least the next 4 years. So I was thinking maybe SkyWest could have rebid under Delta, but I think they would have done that instead of dropping it. But I could be wrong. They could submit a bid and be like, we're going to do this under the Delta brand now. The only other thing I see,
I'm sure they have
and
to
the only
do it
one
at a new subsidy rate as well,
is possibly United doing under their 550 because it's a strong market. That's the only other thing that I could think of.
This is one of the stronger EAS markets that's out there, similar to Presque Isle. It's a longer route. They definitely have the capacity and the ability to serve it with a larger plane, because even what was I saying? I don't know. Completely blanking here for some reason. Oh,
no worries. It's just, and once again, we're in a situation where we don't have that many jet service providers, and there's no one that's really. Denver Air could maybe serve it, but they're already. It feels like what they're doing with Ironwood, and I use that as an example, is because they're just short on aircraft. Of having the Minneapolis, the Thief River Fall planes do Minneapolis, and the Watertown Chicago plane do the Chicago Ironwood run. It feels like they're doing that because they don't have enough aircraft. Could be wrong. Maybe they're just trying to utilize the aircraft they are using as much as possible to be more efficient. But I looked the other night, and there was a pretty extensive delay because they had to get an aircraft from their Centennial maintenance base, ferry it to Ironwood. I'm guessing the aircraft went down for maintenance, and then use it for Ironwood, Minneapolis, and then up to Thief Rivers, which caused some delays for the next day too.
And then
so I don't feel. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was saying that brings up the next thing. I wish when carriers would bid the contracts, they would say, "Hey, this is the time we're gonna, this is the departure time we're gonna have." The Ironwood, I'm sure they're glad they have Denver Air Connection, but the bank times are horrible. They're absolutely horrible. The earliest departure time out of Ironwood is at 1 in the afternoon. Yes, that is the first flight of the day out of Ironwood, Michigan, is at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So right off the bat, there you are not going to make it to your destination until the evening, or in the middle of the night, or the nighttime if you're going anywhere further than the Midwest. The Chicago flight leaves at 12:55 noon, which is essentially 1, and then the Minneapolis flight leaves at 3 p.m. That's what's going to happen with a lot of these cities. They're going to get these god-awful departure times where they are not going to be connecting, and I have a feeling what is happening with passengers in this area is they're driving to places like Iron Mountain or Rhinelander, Wisconsin, in order to get those early morning departures that Delta has to their hubs.
Exactly,
Because,
and I read some of the community comments and the exact same thing you mentioned, and it has been a constant complaint. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I believe they changed the Pierre schedule, right, recently, for an earlier morning flight when SkyWest left.
And like you said, the planes aren't even, usually for these EAS cities, they try and have the planes fly into these small communities at night, sit there overnight, and then depart the next morning. These planes aren't even in the same time zone in the morning. For the Minneapolis flight in Ironwood, the plane starts in Thief River Falls, goes to Minneapolis, then goes to Ironwood. The plane for Chicago flight starts in Watertown at like 9 in the morning, and then it flies to Chicago, and then it flies to Ironwood. And that's why they have these awful departure times. And I think, getting back on topic here, I think Houghton is going to look at Ironwood and say, all right, if we want this service, we're going to have to expect these kind of departure times. And it's because they're going to just be
if
pulling
you want to
planes
maintain jet service, you're going to have to make some choices.
Right? Yeah. If beggars can't be choosers, you're going to have to suck it up and take a 1 p.m. first flight out of these cities, or again, I could see a PC-12 would be great for this route, but with the proximity to Ironwood, I do not think they're going to recommend boutique.
Oh, no. They'll say things about boutique. I don't think they're going to be nice things. I listened. One of the local news boards it was the dial-in, so I actually listened to that board meeting where Sean Simpson, I believe Tom Warren at the time came in, and that airport board just ripped them apart. It was not a pretty meeting by any means. And it was that same meeting where they announced where they agreed they would leave. So it got pretty ugly. For sure.
But so Houghton, I think they are going to go Southern Airways Express.
Really?
With either a PC-12 or the King Air. And this is one of those cities, unlike Chadron, where they can't just say, okay, we'll have the King Air and then swap a Cessna, because unlike Chadron to Denver, Houghton to Chicago is not a short route by any means. Back when Air Choice 1 had Ironwood, that Cessna 208 left to Ironwood at 4 in the morning in order to get to Chicago for the early morning United Bank.
Wow.
So unless they want the flight departure at 3:30 in the morning, they're going to have to do a PC-12 or a King Air.
Yeah, and that brings up another question with Southern. I'm pretty sure their PC-12s were acquired from the Mokulele acquisition when they used to do the Lanai Air Run. So I think they have 2 of them right now, and it sounds like they're going to be using them in Jackson. What I found interesting, I don't know if you saw on the Southern... go ahead.
So I was going to say, I don't know if they got those. The Lanai Air still exists.
Correct. It is operated under Western now.
Right. I know when Southern was bidding cities, and they're bringing planes. So when an EAS community bids a city and they have a meeting, sometimes they'll fly in a plane and show off to the city. I know when they did that for a couple of those cities, Southern Airways flew in a PC-12 and it said Surf Air on it. So I'm thinking if they have to get PC-12s, they're going to lease them from Surf Air.
I was just about to say,
all of their flights are operated by Advanced Air.
I saw on Southern's website, they're offering PC-12 position. One was for Jackson, but now it was the DOT made it official that flight will be a Caravan. I forgot about that. But the other location was Hawthorne, and I was really curious why, but I did not hear about that. So I'm really curious to see what's happening with the Surf Air partnership and which aircraft Southern's going to be using. That's going to make a difference.
But Houghton is going to have to be pressurized. Unless they do just Minneapolis, it's going to have to be a PC-12 or a King Air in order to make it to Chicago and not have a 3:30 a.m. departure time. But I do think it is going to go to Southern Airways Express for Houghton or Hancock, Michigan, whatever you want to call it, CMX Airport in the Upper Peninsula. I think it's going to go to Southern Airways, but what city? At least Minneapolis, maybe Chicago if they have more King Airs, but if it's just the Cessnas, it's going to be Minneapolis.
Okay. Moving on, we're going to go down south to good old Mississippi. We got the cities of Hattiesburg and Meridian. Before SkyWest, American provided both Chicago and DFW service on their Embraer aircraft. What are your predictions for these cities?
These two cities, and you said Chicago and Dallas-Fort Worth, these cities are currently served by United to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these are the two cities that are tagged.
Yeah, for reference, Meridian also significantly outperformed Hattiesburg. However, Hattiesburg had the best, they actually had more enplanements in 2020 than 2019, which is arguably one of the airline's best years on record, which I thought was
which is super weird. All right off the bat, that's super weird. It's just odd to have the pandemic months perform better than anything else. That's like, what the heck? The Southeast is going to be tough. Most of the hubs for where'd it go? For Meridian and Hattiesburg, whatever.
Yeah.
The closest hub is going to be Memphis.
Yeah.
But even Memphis is 200 miles away. The closest relatively large airline hub is 200 miles away. Atlanta's roughly 270 miles. Houston is 420 and Dallas is 480. These are going to need a jet unless you're going to Memphis.
Yeah, so one of the airlines I was considering was American coming back and doing just DFW service.
I'm thinking that Dallas, I'm thinking for both of these cities, actually, that American or Envoy or whoever with American will bid their E-145 or whatever plane they have available, that 50-seat, and they're going to do Dallas-Fort Worth. That is the only conceivable thing I see happening. Southern Airways is probably going to bid Memphis and Atlanta or both, but I think if the city wants jets or is looking for jets, I think those cities are both going to go to American. Whether or not it's a tag flight, I don't know yet, but I think they're both going to go to American.
Yeah, I've noticed, United doing those tag flights. I don't think American has really done anything like that.
I've never in their history seen, American only has 4 EAS cities right now. And they're all in completely separate parts. You got upstate New York. One of them is in Iowa, one's in Nebraska, and one's in Kansas. So they're not really condensed to a certain area like the majority of Delta's contracts are. But
exactly.
Yeah, I still see both of them going to American.
Yeah, my predictions, I think Silver's going to put a bid in. They put a bid in for Jackson the first time around, and they want to start Atlanta service, and I could see them putting another bid in for the Saab 340.
Actually,
whether they get chosen or not, I don't know, but I think they will bid. Same with Boutique. I think they'll propose quite a few options between DFW, Atlanta, Houston, possibly Nashville. I even threw in Miami. I think they may throw in Miami because they did it before for these contracts. And then Southern. They Meridian, they proposed, I believe, DFW and Miami.
That is really far, especially considering that even the closest one of Hattiesburg, that city to Miami, Hattiesburg to Miami is 647 miles. That's 200 miles longer than Boutique's current longest city, and that's going over water, which on a single engine, I don't think they can do. So they'd still have to go around the Florida Panhandle, which makes that route even longer.
Yeah, that's going to be a
really expensive subsidy.
That's one of my more wild predictions. But they did propose it before, so it's within the realms of possibilities.
Oh. What was this? All right, so although again, it's really going to come down, I think, at this point to the cost of it.
Yeah, not SkyWest. DOT has been really on top of airline subsidy costs. I think there was some recent order in 2020 or 2021 where they're really starting to nail airlines.
So the jet service is going to be obviously the most expensive. If Silver does bid, like you said, I actually could see them getting Houston service.
Interesting. Because I could see them doing it. The problem is all the past, like, I took a look at all their proposals within like the last 30 years or so, and with the exception of course Bar Harbor, everything they bid has pretty much been in the southeast, and they have all been to Atlanta. I'm not sure if that's part of their game plan. They want to focus on Atlanta, but I haven't seen anything else in Atlanta.
Okay. All right. I'm still going to stick with
which I think Houston would be great, especially since it's already there, existing service.
The United, well, not so much because it's already serving, but because Silver interlines baggage agreement with United.
Correct. They also have the co-chairs, which I believe Delta, American, and maybe United. I would have to check for proposals, but they actually list them.
Silver does JetBlue and United, from what I know of. So
the co-chair?
I don't know. That's why Atlanta's the closest, but I don't know. Who's going to bid? Probably Boutique, Southern, American. But it's really going to come down to who has jet.
Yeah.
All right. Where to next?
Right. Next, we are going... We did Hayes already. We did Jamestown, right?
You mean Johnstown?
Jamestown, North Dakota. That was with the other North Dakota, Devil's Lake, right?
North Dakota.
Yep. But yes, Johnstown, next one. So a former boutique destination, and in fact a current maintenance base for the airline. They did provide service to both Pittsburgh and Baltimore before SkyWest took over the route with the Chicago and Dulles service. I read a local news article, and it sounds like they really want to pursue jet, but they are also considering boutique. They specifically mentioned that. So I don't think they want to go back to Southern. When boutique first came in, Southern was performing. They were struggling. And boutique came in, and they had a humongous increase in passenger traffic, which got SkyWest interested, and eventually they transitioned service up to that jet. However, the employments have not been too remarkable for that community. In fact, boutique almost had the same amount of employment as SkyWest last year, which was 12,000 approximately.
Right. And this is one of those interesting cities that has not ever had jet service during a pre-pandemic era. Mm-hmm. They got this service in the midst of the pandemic. I want to say summer of 2020 sometime. So these employments might be a little bit dragged down by that pandemic, as SkyWest United has never flown to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, when there wasn't a pandemic going on. Every United passenger that has ever flown out of Johnstown has been wearing a mask at all times, for the most part. I think that this is going to go back to boutique, and I think boutique is going to give them a discount, or not a discount. They're not giving them coupons. There's no essential air service coupons.
Reduced subsidy.
Be clear with that. But I think Boutique is going to have the subsidy be lower per the fact that they have a maintenance base here already and continue to keep it open even after they lost it 2 years ago. And I think this is going to go back to Boutique with Pittsburgh and Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I know Southern, of course, is going to bid their Pittsburgh the Dulles service, and I think they're going to pitch them hard. They're going to try getting a really low subsidy, really try pushing the contract, but I think Johnstown will make a push for Boutique to get in. So that's one of the ones that I'm really interested to see, not only the community and their thoughts, but also if the DOT will back them up. So we'll have to wait for a few weeks to see, but that's another one that I think we can move on unless you have any other thoughts on that?
No. We have about 8 cities left. Let's see. Do you want to head to the Midwest? We still haven't done Paducah, Kentucky.
Yeah, in fact, the next few are actually going to be combined together. So we have Joplin, Kearney, Liberal, North Platte, Scottsbluff, Paducah.
Okay, so let's take those one at a time because they're all in very different parts of the country.
But Paducah and Joplin are pretty close, right?
Right. All right, so Paducah.
So let's shop. Joplin, I think, is going to be easy because AA provided service for a long time before E145 service to DFW. There may be other bids, but I think they're going to get American back.
Right. I think Joplin is going to go back to American. Whether or not it's going to be Dallas for sure. That's at least 100 miles shorter than Joplin to Chicago. Yeah, Joplin's easy. It's going back to American. That's my prediction for Joplin, Missouri.
Yeah, I didn't even put anyone else. I just didn't even see anyone. Paducah, that's another interesting one because you got Cape Girardeau down there. You got Quincy, Marion. You have so many essential air service communities just in one central location.
Yeah.
And I could see
really close.
Yeah, I can see Boutique and Southern going for it. Of course, with some St. Louis, Nashville, maybe even Chicago combination on PC-12, and then for Southern, the PC-12 or the Caravan. The only other bidder I could see is possibly Contour with service to Nashville on the 135.
Possibly. These cities are going to be really interesting. Again, another city. I would love Boutique to fly there, but Paducah is going to talk to Jackson about Boutique because Paducah is not that far away from Jackson. Mm-hmm. But I do think that Boutique will get either Cape Girardeau. I don't remember what I said my prediction was for Cape Girardeau. That was so long ago. But Paducah, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go to Southern Airways. So Cape Girardeau and Paducah, Southern, I think, is going to have both. So whatever my Cape Girardeau... Do you think
they'll incorporate Memphis? Because they have that big Memphis hub, which is really close, I believe, to Paducah.
So whatever my Cape Girardeau hub was from the beginning of this, that was one of the first cities we talked about. Whatever I said then, ignore it. I think both are going to go Southern Airways. But because they're so close, let's see, both cities, they're 45 miles away from each other, those two cities.
Wow.
And then Marion is 50 miles north of Paducah. Those cities are 45, 50, and 50 miles. It's a perfect triangle. Those cities, oh my God, that's a perfect triangle. Marion's 48 miles away from Cape Girardeau. Paducah's 45 miles away from Cape Girardeau. And Marion and Paducah are 50 miles away from each other. They are not going to want the same air service at all three of those cities, which is why I'm still surprised that SkyWest has both of those. Southern, I think, is going to get both, but they're going to try and differentiate service between the two. One of them, I'm thinking, is going to have St. Louis and Nashville, and the other one, I think, is going to have Memphis and, Memphis. It's going to come down to whatever hubs are the cheapest. But I don't
Yeah,
think
and there's some destinations like Marion they do that St. Louis to Nashville combo, but there's also I believe Cape, but and some airports like that. They like to have the St. Louis, Memphis kind of the medium hub airports, but they might want to do Memphis and Chicago and Paducah
right.
and have that combo.
Like I know up here in the Midwest, cities are like, oh, we want Chicago, we want Chicago. For those small cities in the Midwest, they desperately want either one or two things. Chicago, but on a prop plane that's kind of out of the question, or Nashville. Nashville is the big draw in the tourist attraction for these small communities down here.
Yeah, and Nashville actually has grown a lot. I think American expanded their presence up there during COVID.
Yeah, right, exactly. American expanded, not a significant amount, but they did expand in Nashville. And so have a bunch of other carriers. Allegiant, I think now they had a base there, but now it's even significantly grown since COVID began. I think Cape Girardeau and Paducah, it's going to be Southern Airways for both, but it's going to be a mix of hubs between Nashville, Memphis, and St. Louis. Because with Air Choice 1 serving Jonesboro to St. Louis, and that now being Southern Airways, they're not going to just keep one route out of St. Louis. Now that they have that city, I'm thinking they're going to try and build it up a little bit. Not significantly because they already have Memphis and Nashville, but they are going to add a couple more routes.
Yeah, this is actually going to be really interesting for Southern because when they first started, they had a huge, dense Southern, Southeast really route network. And it's really barren right now. But with these acquisitions of the Jackson contract and potentially these other ones, they're really going to build that back up. And I could see them doing what they do before and also what Air Choice 1 did and just kind of connect these communities and really give a lot of one-stop opportunities to these large hubs and maybe even add a city or two that are maybe not subsidized but are really popular destinations. So there's a lot that Southern can do with these markets. I know they've done in the Northeast, they did that, I believe in Bradford, they did some special flights to New York City for a few weeks just to see the demand. So
right.
Southern is just a carrier to watch, really. They're going to do some big things.
Definitely. Denver Air Connection and Southern Airways are going to be the two carriers to watch very carefully during this whole thing. Southern said they're going to be bidding for a majority of these cities. Obviously, they can't say which ones because they don't want to spoil anything, and they don't want to give away their strategy. But they did say they're going to bid for a majority of those cities. Whether that means 28 or 20, I don't know. But Southern Airways is going to be the carrier to watch during this whole thing. Yes, Denver Air Connection has the jets, but now Southern Airways, in addition to their current fleet, they have the 8, 9, or 10 or whatever number of Cessna planes that they just got from Air Choice 1, and they're only doing Air Choice 1's network's only 3 routes, but they have 8 or 9 airplanes, and now Southern gets to figure out something to do with those airplanes, and I think that's going to be really exciting to watch. Absolutely.
And they're going to bring all of the Air Choice 1 into the Southern brand, right? They're not going to keep it independent.
They said they were going to rebrand Jonesboro as Southern by midsummer some point.
All right. Moving on back west, we're going to tackle the lovely Nebraska routes. So we got Kearney. We talked about Liberal already, right? Yeah.
We talked about Liberal. We have Kearney, North Platte, and Scottsbluff.
Yeah. And I bunched these up because these were all former Penn Air routes. So Kearney, Liberal, North Platte, and Scottsbluff were all
cities
Penn Air.
Have not been very lucky. First with Great Lakes, they kind of went when Great Lakes went crap. And then Penn Air is an Alaska carrier that I don't even know if they still exist. I think they may have rebranded as Raven.
Nope.
But Penn Air had Saab 340 base at Denver, and they served a majority of these routes in there. And then they went, and then in came Boutique for a short amount of time, and then SkyWest has been there for a number of years now.
Yeah, and when SkyWest came, I looked at the employment. You see Penn Air, they did pretty good. You know, they had about 8,000 or 9,000 passengers for each community. SkyWest comes in, it shoots up doubles the passenger traffic. They're around 15 to 16,000 each, which is about 30,000 passengers total annually. And most of them have just over 30, so 33. Pandemic hit a lot of them pretty hard. Some of them, especially Kearney, really have struggled to recover. Actually, Kearney was actually the one that did better in 2021 than 2019. Scottsbluff is the one that's really suffering in terms of employment. They only have 1,000 more from 2020 to 2021. They went from 20,000 to 21,000, and they had 33,000 passengers in 2019. So they're not experiencing the same level of recovery as some of the other communities are. But with this big growth, that's one of the other reasons that I was thinking Denver Air is probably going to focus around these Denver routes, and specifically the Nebraska routes.
Absolutely.
So I included in all of them.
Right, and I think in this area, it's going to be a major head-to-head battle between Denver Air Connection and Southern Airways Express. Southern Airways only currently has that one route out of Denver, and I think they're going to want to very much build up that base. It's just so interesting to see how SkyWest decided to stop which cities. Scottsbluff is on the very the western side of Nebraska, and it's only roughly 115 miles away from Laramie, Wyoming, which is an EAS city that United is not dropping. So essentially anything east of the Wyoming-Nebraska border, anything east of that, they're dropping with SkyWest.
Really interesting. Laramie actually has less passenger traffic than most of these Nebraska routes.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's just super weird. But so either way, it's going to be a head-to-head battle between Denver Air Connection and Southern Airways Express. But if they're doing in these cities what they're doing to Alamosa, meaning if they're going to do E145 / Dornier 328 jet / Metroliner, they're going to choose Denver Air Connection in a heartbeat because they have the possibility of jets. They're going to choose
and it gives Denver Air the flexibility they need. And what I noticed too when I was looking these contracts up in the history of each airport, these Nebraska airports are pretty much, besides McCook, pretty much have a consensus. They all went with Great Lakes. They all went with Penn Air. They all went with SkyWest. So there's a good chance that they're going to come into the same agreement. So I think it's going to be a one for all. I think if they want Denver Air, they're going to go all for Denver Air, which I think is a real possibility because of that jet service. But they need that jet service. They won't go anything lower.
Right, and absolutely. And again, 100%, all of those cities are going to be served by Denver and Denver alone. I don't think any of those cities are going to see anywhere Chicago or any other hubs except for Denver. They're all going to go Denver, guarantee it. But like you said, I do think they're going to combine Scottsbluff, Kearney, and what was the other one?
North Platte.
North Platte. I think they're going to combine them into one contract, and they're going to say, "Hey, it's like what United tried to do when they did when they did Ogdensburg and Messina. They said, hey, we're either going to get all of these cities or we're going to get none of these cities. And then they're going to combine the routes somehow, and they may even do some kind of tag flights."
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. These routes, I believe, under Great Lakes were tag flights. So it's something they could do, but there also is a lot of passenger traffic. And even if they're using a 145, I don't know if that's going to be enough capacity to do a tag flight. I think there's going to be too much demand.
Yeah, it's honestly
it
may come down to frequency over tag flights. Again, it's going to come down. It's going to come down to frequency over tag flights is what's going to happen.
And I think because Boutique right now, they're doing 12 round trips to McCook, and even when they're doing cities like Dodge City, the most they had to a single destination was, I believe, Alamosa. I believe that was 5 flights a day, and which is really good. But if you do anything less, like 2, 3, even 4, like I think they'll still look at the jet. You really need to get the frequencies pretty high for them to consider something else.
Right. But especially Denver is east of the mountains, and Nebraska, the southern part of Nebraska is still pretty much low-lying elevation-wise, and I think this is where Southern Airways may try to dump a whole bunch of the Cessnas.
Yep.
Just because the elevation's relatively low and they can serve Cessnas to these places, which we have seen in the past, 9 or 10 months when they've been serving Chadron when they were supposed to be doing the King Air.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's gonna be another impact is Southern proposed to King Air, and who knows what aircraft they'll propose for these communities. But if they're going to look at Chadron and see that they've gone down to the 208. Now, if they want that,
right.
that might be one thing. But if they don't, that's probably going to be an issue with
right.
them.
And they're going to, just like these other cities look at Boutique, they're going to look at and they're going to talk to Chadron. And I know Chadron has been pretty angry that Southern Airways still hasn't put the King Air there. I know they said, it's the FAA and stuff. We understand that. The government stuff is always kind of slow. But the fact that this is happening still in the beginning of April when they started service last June, and out of the hundreds of flights they've done, would you say 2 or 3 of them have been on the King Air?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's been under 5.
5. Okay, so 5 flights out of the hundreds they've done have been on the plane they said they were going to do it on. And then recently they flew the plane back to their maintenance base or whatever in Dubois, Pennsylvania. So who knows what's happening?
Yeah, I'm very, very curious.
All right. I don't have much time left, but there are 3 cities left, one of which still staying in the Rocky Mountain region, Pueblo. It is the shortest EAS city out of Denver, and it is only 109 miles. I think this is just going to go Southern Airways Express just because it's a short route, something they can easily do on a Cessna.
Is a elevation? I'm not sure the elevation is good for that one.
I don't know. I'll have to look. Oh, it's a nice looking airport. No. Why is this page being translated from Persian? That's weird. I don't know. 4,700 feet. It's not that high.
Okay, that's good. I mean, they're flying a Sholo, which is like 6,800 or something, or 8,000 elevation. So,
right.
On a Caravan.
Right, absolutely. But I think Pueblo Airport is going to go to Southern Airways just because it's a short route. They can bid it they can bid it at a relatively low cost and, build up that Denver hub. Just get a short route out of there to start building up.
Yeah.
All right.
My predictions were pretty much the same as Alamosa. I think it was going to be really similar between Denver Air and Boutique. I was really surprised Southern didn't put a bid in for that. I was really surprised because that's good money and an easy route.
All right. I think with that one, they were kind of waiting to see what was happening with Cortez.
Okay. I can see that.
Which still hasn't, it's April 3rd right now, which still they haven't put out the final word on that. The community recommended Denver Air Connection, but Denver Air Connection's bid for Cortez, Colorado is, I believe, more than double the price of Southern Airways. Something like $9 million?
$7 million to Southern's 3.3, I think.
Yeah. Southern Air's you said 3.8?
3.5, somewhere in that region.
3.5.
It was definitely half.
And you got Denver Air Connection that's doing $7 million. This is going to happen. I have a feeling, I love Denver Air Connection. It'd be great for them to serve Cortez. But I think this is going to happen with the same thing that happened in Watertown and Pierre. They're going to choose the cheaper carrier. Even though the community recommended one carrier, this Southern Airways is more than half the price. Or it's
Yeah, and they're well qualified for it. The only issue is what we discussed before about that King Air. The Department of Transportation is going to look at that, and you do not want to ride Cortez in a caravan because they have to reroute a significant amount away.
And that's one of the things they have to get ready. And I have a feeling if Southern Air does get that, I have a feeling even when they get the King Air, they're going to prioritize Cortez because they need that plane with those mountains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. They'll take it off of Shadron and just put it onto Cortez full time.
All right. 2 cities left.
I think
next one.
I have Victoria. Did you have another one?
I was about to say Victoria as well.
Is there any other?
Victoria is the only EAS city in Texas. Closest hub is Houston, and then there's also Dallas, which is near there. I think Southern's going to bid it. I think Southern's going to get this city.
I think Boutique.
You do?
Yeah, I mean, they have history, good history with the airport. They spent a lot of money in marketing. They had a maintenance base there for a while. The big concern when SkyWest got it is they were dropping their DFW service. And that's big for the community. There's a lot of traffic going through. Looking at the statistics, there's actually a little more traffic going through Dallas than there was Houston. So between the PC-12, which is a nicer aircraft, and the community already having experience with Boutique, I think they'll choose it.
All right. The reason I didn't say Boutique is because I know Victoria was one of the communities that Boutique had bid for the King Air, which Boutique for a while had the King Air, and I know that plane never, I don't know what the statistic was, but it seemed like not many of the flights were actually on the King Air, the plane that was bid on, and my only thought there is the community didn't want to go through the same thing. I know they don't have the King Air anymore, but I don't know if the community thinks they'll lose their promise or something like that, and that's the only reason I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I did remember that. I still think Boutique will get it. The code-share with United is really attractive. I'm not sure if Southern will serve Houston. I think they could because they bid it before, correct?
Right. Yeah, and the only reason I say Southern is because Southern Airways already has a pretty sizable operation in Dallas, and they operate from the same area that and that was a unique operation. Victoria was part sterile, part non-sterile, which means the flights going to Dallas, they didn't require TSA because they operated into the FBO. And the flights going to Houston, you just went through TSA real quick when you got to Victoria. And then you operated right to the main airline terminal. And it's unique because Southern and Boutique share the exact same space at Dallas-Fort Worth. They share the FBO there, and it's going to be between those two carriers. Their operation is very, very similar, and it's really just going to come between what the community thinks is going to happen and what they think is best for them.
I think it'll also come down to the aircraft because I think Southern will only bid the 208. So,
right, yeah, that's only be the
especially because it's so. Will they want the 208 or the PC-12? I think it'll come down to baggage is going to be an interesting part because PC-12, that's the Achilles heel, but it is also a faster aircraft than the Caravan, and it's arguably a nicer aircraft. It is
faster. The PC-12 is definitely faster. The Cessna 208 holds more baggage. They both have the exact same code shares. They both have American and United. Southern has Alaska as well, but that doesn't really help in Texas unless you're going to Seattle. So it's really going to, like you said, it's really going to come down to what the community believes is best for their citizens. And I truly think it's going to go to Southern.
All right. And I think that covers all the EAS cities.
One more city, actually. Muskegon. Muskegon, Michigan.
Oh, okay. I got that in Hancock combined in my mind.
This is a really interesting city. They are a 45-minute drive from Grand Rapids Airport, which is a lot, which is growing. It's growing a lot. It's a 45-minute drive from Grand Rapids. It's only 40 miles as the bird flies. This city, right before the pandemic, was very close to losing their eligibility. One of the requirements for the program is that you have to be, 120 miles driving distance from a medium or large size hub. They're 40 miles from Grand Rapids. And like I said, before the pandemic, Grand Rapids was about to hit that medium hub threshold size. And the pandemic, it actually saved the eligibility for the program for Muskegon. And this community, it's funny because they had a town meeting, and it was hilarious. This one guy kept saying, well, why don't we start our own airline and pay this or charter a plane to go to these hubs? And I'm thinking, this guy's hilarious. He does not know how air travel works at all. But no, yeah, it was adorable. He was hilarious. But beyond that guy that kept suggesting they start their own airline, the rest of the board was actually the most optimistic and open of any of the EAS cities that I listen to, the board things that have them. And they were talking about, we know we're close to Grand Rapids. We know we are at risk of losing our eligibility. Are we probably going to get jet service? Probably not. And they are very open-minded to having props multiple times a day, and they know that that is probably going to be Muskegon's future.
Interesting.
Yeah, that community is very open-minded, saying, hey, we know we're probably not going to get jets. We're super close to Grand Rapids, and we are going to lose eligibility. And I think at this point, that community is of the mindset of, let's get a carrier here and have their operations solidified so that when we do lose air service, we hopefully have given them a reason enough to stay here without subsidy. What is the employments for that community?
I'm glad you asked. So before COVID, it was the annual passengers was 31,000 in 2018, 36,000 in 2019. It dropped down by half to 18,000 in 2020, and then rose up to 20,000 in 21. So it's been a bit of a slow recovery for them.
It's still a pretty good size employment considering it's 45-minute drive from much larger Grand Rapids.
Definitely.
And their only flight is to Chicago. Like the board said in Muskegon, will they get a bid on a jet? Probably not. Would they love to see it? Absolutely. And will they recommend a jet? Yes. But they are very open-minded, and I really like that they're looking not only of just, we want jets, but they're being very realistic in the fact that they are probably not going to get jet service again, and that there are 28 other communities that are in the same mindset as them of they need to get a new airline. But this community is just being very, very realistic in trying to get their air service. I think this community is honestly going to go to Cape Air. Manistee is on the same shore, the west shore of Michigan State, of the state of Michigan along Lake Michigan. Manistee is 2.5, 3-hour drive north. Manistee is served 2 times daily in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And then in the summer, they get 4 daily flights to Manistee. Will there be that seasonality in Muskegon? No. But I think the fact that they only serve twice a day from Manistee, they could use that plane in Muskegon during the downtime. And I think this is going to be a good way to use that plane when it's not being used, rather than it sitting in Chicago for hours and hours or sitting in Manistee for hours and hours. It can be doing another flight, hopping over the lake to Muskegon.
Interesting. So for my predictions, I did think about Cape Air, but I did read a recent article from the local Manistee news source that there has been significant reliability concerns regarding the new TechNem. For one, they've substituted very frequently to the Cessna 402, which is arguably not as nice of an aircraft as this brand new aircraft they designed. But even then, with the substitutions, they've seen significant delays and cancellations. Cape Air is a great airline. They have very strong, bigger airlines. And I could definitely see Cape Air and Muskegon, but those are definitely some big concerns that they're going to have to address. I also like to say I'm not even trying to make a prediction of which airline will get it, because I honestly don't know. I think Southern. I know Boutique will bid it. My thought on Boutique, I think they'll do a Chicago, Detroit, and maybe even a Grand Rapids option. Or actually, Grand Rapids is probably too close.
Will they bid Grand Rapids? They might, but that would kind of be stupid because there's 40 miles.
They'll do like a Grand Rapids, like the Merced, the Reno, and Monterey. They'll do something like that. They'll throw in some random city.
Right. They'll probably throw in Kalamazoo or some stupid crap like that. I don't know.
Exactly.
Throw Fort Wayne in there for no apparent reason. Or, Chicago Rockford or something stupid. But,
what's the other Chicago one?
That does bring up a point which I forgot. I have noticed that a considerable number of those flights have been on Cessna 402. And that does bring up that interesting point about the reliability. They have very similar climates, although Muskegon doesn't get the amount of snow and cold that Manistee does. They are very similar. They're in the same state. They're along the same lake shore. You can see the same body of water from both airports. They're very similar, but Cape Air also has that. And the community even mentioned what we're looking for is connectivity, which, again, I don't know why that guy wanted to start his own airline, because that makes less sense with connectivity. But it was hilarious.
I'm going to put it next for Joey, and I'm going to propose starting my own airline.
Okay, there you go. But so Cape Air is the only commuter airline that has interline and baggage agreements with Delta Airlines. And I think the fact that they have that could be very lucrative and if they don't, use the Manistee plane during the downtime, I think Chicago, Muskegon, and then continuing on to Detroit could be very helpful for that community, as a majority of the airports in the state of Michigan, with the exception of Manistee, which has Cape, Ironwood, which has
Denver.
Ironwood has Denver Air, and Houghton, which has United. The rest of the, 8, 9, or whatever airports in Michigan, they all fly to Detroit. Detroit is a very big center for the state of Michigan in terms of connectivity. It's a beautiful airport, although I hate the dots on the windows with all of my heart and soul. I think if they offer a Detroit option, the community is going to try and go for Detroit, just because Detroit is such a big impact to the state of Michigan, and the fact that it is a little annoying when you're taking a 20-minute flight from Muskegon to Chicago and you lose an hour, and all of a sudden it's an hour and a half later when you just took a 20-minute flight.
Exactly. The only other one I put in there, this one's for you, Regional Sky, operated by Ultimate with their Dornier.
You put that in there for me. That's hilarious. For the background knowledge, Regional Sky used to operate to Manistee from Chicago Midway using the Dornier jet and the Beech 1900C version. They didn't have any code shares or interline, which is the reason they lost that service. And and reliability. But but we're running low at the end of my time, and I have to get ready for work soon. But so, of course, all of these bids and all of our predictions, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens. Southern Airways Express and Denver Air Connection are going to be the ones to watch during this entire thing. Denver Air Connection with their increasingly expanding, and Southern Airways, especially with that acquiring of Air Choice One, they just got 8, 9, or whatever, how many new Cessnas, and I have a feeling they're going to try and expand their footprint greatly, and they could even become a bigger commuter airline than Cape Air. I think they're around the same number of destinations, Cape Air does outnumber them in flights greatly, but that's only because the Cape and Nantucket, they fly I think 12 daily flights or something crazy like that between Boston and Nantucket. And they do those 8 flights a day between Hyannis and Nantucket. So those aren't EAS cities, but comparing wise, Southern does appear to be one of the biggest EAS carriers now that SkyWest is having all these issues. But the contracts, all the bids and proposals are due to the department. The DOT. All of the bids are due on April 11th, and the 12th and the 13th is going to be very interesting. I'm going to be like a kid in the candy store, and I'm sure you are too, looking at all of those bids. I'm just going to get Steven's 3 hours behind me in time zone. I'm on the Eastern time zone. He's somewhere in Arizona. I'm just going to get a text at 11 midnight and be like, dude, the bids are up. And I'm going to be like, don't tell me.
Oh, yeah. I'm always somewhere in Arizona. Who knows? Sometimes I don't even know.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's either him or I, and we text each other. We're like, oh, my God, the bids are up. And then whoever is the textee, we're like, oh, my God, don't spoil it. I want to read it. So these bids for us are like novels and movies. It's like the new Spider-Man movie for us. It's like, please don't spoil it. I want to read it myself. But it's going to be very interesting. And Southern and Denver Air Connection are going to be the biggest ones to look out for, and I'm excited to see what happens with them. I would love if Boutique would expand again, but I love the airline and the people that work there. It's great. I love flying on the PC-12, but something's got to happen. I don't know what snapped in late 2020, but something snapped, and since then they've just been getting less and less cities, and it's sad to see, but I would love to see them expand again. Will it happen? I really don't know. I hope it does. But
all right. Yeah, well, thank you, Joey, so much for joining us today and taking the time out of your day to go over this very exciting news. Do you have any concluding thoughts?
No, that's really my only thought. And if you know me, don't tell me the bids on the 11th when they come out. I want to read them myself.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Joey, for joining us today and going over these predictions for these different essential air service contracts. It's going to be really interesting to see which airlines go for which locations and who's looking to expand and what the different communities think. Are they going to be willing to let up their jet service in order to maintain service at all, or will they try going after different jet service options? And of course, any surprises that come along the way, because whenever we make some predictions, there's always something that comes out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be one or two random carriers. I'm sure Air Charter Express is going to throw their hat in the ring for who knows what reason. Then there's going to be a couple weird outliers in there. And, hey, if Delta and SkyWest bid for some of them, oh, my God, that would be great. But, it's going to be very interesting, and the communities just have to realize that there are 28 other cities that are in the same place as they are. So people they just have to be realistic. And I listen to people that are from these cities telling me even now, oh, we should have this, or we have enough people or employments, we should have this. Look, I know it sucks that all of this is happening, but you just have to be realistic, because 29 cities are all not going to have jet served. Come the end of the summer, I'd say half of those cities are no longer going to have jets. If they do, that would be great. But realistically, half of you in those cities are not going to have jet service come September 1st. So you just kind of got to be realistic, because beggars can't be choosers. I hate being the person to say that, but beggars really can't be choosers. You want jet service, or do you want no airline service at all? It's as simple as that.
All right. Well, thank you again, Joey, for joining us today. I look forward to going over all the exciting contracts coming up here in just over a week.
Absolutely. Talk to you on April 13th.